everybody, it's me, Laura, and I'm back again today with a really fun one. This is going to be a steampunk spoon jewelry thing, and I think you're going to love this. I have some spoons here, and one is a kind of like a large tablespoon kind of a thing. The other one's kind of a regular spoon, and I decided to use the larger spoon and place a little bit of clay right over the back of this thing. The clay was rolled out on a number 4 setting on my Atlas pasta machine. And notice here, I'm just pulling, I'm pulling that clay right off of that spoon. I figure why not? And I do go back in and I'm gonna use my blade to trim up all the extra around the side. That works really good. The nice thing about pulling is it makes it really nice and consistent. You don't have to worry about using any kind of thing to conform it because the spoon does it naturally for you. Anyway, I got this all trimmed up now. And once I have that, I'm going to bring in some more of my clay and I'm going to roll that out on a number 5 setting. You could do a number 4 too. It's totally up to you. But I'm going to start cutting out like rectangular pieces and I'm going to start placing some of these rectangular pieces down on the spoon itself, and they will act as little, you might say, steampunk plates. Remember my pipes and plates video? If you need to, go back and check that out, and I'll put a link to it here in the description area so that you know what I'm talking about. You can go and check it out if you wish. And this kind of goes along that same idea, except you're doing it right off of a spoon. Now you're probably wondering, okay, why a spoon, cousin? Sorry. My Robin Hood pops in there. Anyway, why not a knife? Or, it's like, sorry. It hits in there. What can I say? Anyway, I just liked the feature of the spoon. It's a nice round oval kind of thing. You have a handle to work right off of. You don't have to worry about getting this, too thumbed up, if you will. I mean, that's the best way of me being able to put it. And tearing the pieces right off of the spoon, you can then trim them off whenever you need. It works great. I absolutely loved this. There was just something about it. Now, mind you, I picked up these spoons at my local, store, my local grocery store or whatever. You can do that. My other suggestion here would be and go and check out your thrift stores. If they have any antique type spoons, maybe see what they have for designs and stuff, because that stuff can come in really handy. Just as a hint, like maybe later on, Laura might be doing a video on something like that. Yeah. Anyway, I'm just placing down a bunch of these little plates that I'm making onto my spoon. Once I get this done though, I'm also going to be placing down, I want to say a few things of, I'm going to be creating some belts on here. So you're going to be cutting out strips, creating belts. You're also going to be creating a few pipes. So you're going to be rolling some clay into some logs, creating some very, very small little pipes. And again, I'm going to be bringing in my plus and minus screwdrivers, and it's the very detailed little ones. As you can tell there, I'm giving you the dimensions of this spoon. So 2 inches wide by about 2 3/4 long. And I want to say that's fairly large, so it's probably like a serving spoon. So, go check out your spoons, see what you can find. There's all sorts of different kinds out there, with different patterns and stuff. But generally, you're going to have a larger spoon. You're going to have your regular spoons that you eat with and all that. Just see what you have. See what you can experiment with. I mean, even if you got like baby spoons, which I can't wait. I want to try that. And I didn't put that in here, but something to think about. Or even like in your sugar bowl, you have maybe a sugar spoon, those little tiny ones. I love those things. Anyway, think about that. See what you might be able to do when you're creating this. However, also keep in mind that if you use that spoon in the studio with the clay, you will not be able to put it back into your regular eating utensils. So find something that you don't use. Find a spoon you don't use, or a series of spoons that you will not use, and that you can dedicate it strictly to the clay when you're doing this sort of thing. Another thing that you're going to see in this video too is that when I go to measure things, I started doing it where I did it in my regular inches and what I'm used to here in the States. Whereas I know that people abroad, they like to do things more in metric. Well, I also tried to start doing things more, where I'm measuring more in metric. It's not my usual thing that I measure with, so I'm trying to get myself used to that mentally. It's like, okay, give both types of dimensions, please. So I'm going to try and start doing that more and more. Okay, so here's the thing with coming in and doing the belts for this piece. My belts were going to be really tiny, and I have my needle tools right here that I usually use. They were all really big. I mean, like really, really big. So I went to my sewing cabinet and took out my needles, and sure enough, I was like, yeah, that's what I need. I need a very tiny needle. And since I didn't have a handle for it, I thought I'll roll out a little bit of that mud or scrap clay that I've got. I'll create a little handle, stick my needle into it, and then bake that thing at 275 degrees or 300. I want to make sure it was solid. And I went at least a good 20 minutes or more on this handle because this thing was over a quarter of an inch thick. And when you have something that thick, you want to make sure it's solidly baked all the way through. So for you guys, it'll probably be even longer because, altitude and climate definitely, do a little bit of a number on the clay. And since I'm in a high altitude kind of climate and, a fairly dry deserty type conditions, most places are not going to be like that. You're going to have to change up your baking time there. Anyway, right here you could tell I made those pipes beforehand. I went ahead and baked those again at 275 degrees, 7 to 10 minutes for me. Again, your time's going to be different, but I'm bringing in these little tiny dots. I'm placing them down onto the back of my spoon piece here. And then once I take these particular pieces of pipe where I had made them into that little U shape, I'm going to push that down and you'll make that three-dimensional piece that can go right onto your spoon. I love those pipes. I can't help it. That's one of my favorite features anymore in doing the steampunk is creating the pipe feature. I love that part. Anyway, I made a few of these little pipes. I made some of them a little bit taller, if you will. And when you put the dots down to where you make the little connecting cuffs or whatever, I don't know what they're called. I'm just kind of coming up with in my head. This is what I'm going to call it. And then pushing that again back down into the clay really gives a nice three-dimensional look to it. Now, once I get my pipes put in here, I decided I needed to make some more smaller, really tiny logs because I had some of my leftover gears and my leftover clay watches or clocks that I had made. And you could see that in my other videos. I will put links to all of my videos on the steampunk when it comes to the clock faces and the clock hands, the gears and pipes, and the belts, and that way then you can always refer back to them whenever you need. I'll also put a playlist in my channel area that will deal directly with steampunk, so you can always refer back to these videos if you need to get to them. But anyway, I'm coming in, I'm making those little tiny logs, and I'm placing the gears down and the watch faces, saying, okay, do I like the look of that? And I really like the look of these particular pieces, so I thought we'll leave that there. But eventually I decided, yeah, I need to also place in my belts. That was the one thing I hadn't done yet. So I went ahead and cut out a couple of these strips, placed them into the piece, and then bring in that needle tool I had made with my little tiny needle, or I should say needles from the sewing cabinet, and used that to do the stitching. It made a huge difference. It was so much easier. I wasn't dealing with a large needle. Instead, I was using a needle that was definitely made for about this sizing. Okay, so now we're going to start creating our earrings for the spoon pendant. And right here, I'm bringing in my clay. This was rolled out on a number 4 setting once more on my Atlas pasta machine. And instead of going with the spoon end, we're going to go with the handle end. And notice here too, I also have 2 of these spoons. These are regular size spoons that you would eat with. And I'm just going to pull the clay right off of the handle. I thought, let's use the other end. Why not, right? It's there to design on too. We can have some fun, right? I mean, why not? So anyways, I put the clay on the handle and then I bring in my blade and trim it all up. I'm going to do the same with the other one. And the nice thing about having both of these spoons, so if you could find 2 of each, whatever size spoon you got, except for maybe the serving spoons. That might get a little bit big. I mean, think about it. I mean, those things on your ears or what, even if you use the spoon end, can you imagine that? That's going to get pretty big. Unless you really like that sort of thing, yeah, go ahead. But anyway, I'm trimming off my extra here, and then I'm going to put both of those together, and you'll notice that I'm off slightly on one. So bring them together and try to get them evened up by cutting down using your blade and making sure that you have a nice straight line if at all possible. If not, that's okay, because you can always come in later and possibly trim it up if you need to. And even as I did this here, this was not my finished result or my finished height. The more I started looking at these, I thought, this is a little too long. I want these to be shortened up. So I came in later and I went ahead and cut off the top and took off a little bit more from the top of the handle there. Once I do that, I'm going to bring in some more of that clay. This one's been rolled out on a number 5 setting, and I'm going to use this for creating my plating on the spoon handles. Now, in developing these particular earrings, I realized that, one, they're fairly narrow, right? We don't have a huge background to work off of. And when I was doing so, I thought, I'm not going to put all of the elements on my earring area. I'm only going to use a few. So I thought, I'll bring in the belts, I'll bring in a little bit of the plating, and then I also brought in slightly a little bit of gear and a little bit of clock, if you will, clay clock. So these were pre-made. And again, just refer back to my other videos on the steampunk. You'll see what I'm talking about there, especially when it comes to the molds and trying to create that. or you can even use metal ones if you want to order them online. Again, those other videos really help a lot. But I went ahead and I thought, I'm going to leave out the pipes. I just thought, we don't need to. It's a nice feature on the main pendant piece. It'll kind of be a focal point as well, and that will help a lot when it comes to, you got your focus with the pendant, and then the earrings just kind of make that nice frame to that pendant piece. Now, here's the thing with this particular set of earrings, the one thing that I have not featured in any of my steampunk has been actual tiny itty bitty little metal watch gears. And I have some of those. I'm going to try and find a link and put that in the description area. So if you guys want to go and find some of those, you can. The more I started looking through here, and I thought, okay, I can use this particular mold or cutter type version or whatever I have in creating it, but you get to a point where eventually things get so tiny that you're like, that's not going to work. So what do I use? So I went and I actually use little tiny itty bitty watch gears. And like I said, I'm going to go ahead, I'll put a link in the description area for you to find something like that. They are metal, and it worked out great in completing up these earrings. So from here, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to let you guys just watch my hands talk as I complete up creating our steampunk spoon earrings. All right, so now we're going to start creating, or I should say painting, our large pendant piece. And I'm just taking the clay right off the back of that spoon. I'll set that spoon aside. You'll notice up there I have a little bit of a tail. You can cut that off. I put that up there so I kind of know where center is for me when it comes to this pendant piece. That's the nice thing about this. I don't have to try and find center. It's already there. And so with that pendant, cut off flush now, I can start to make sure that everything is nice and put together. I thought I could take the little pipes out. No, not quite. So if you really want to make sure that you do the pipes in there, you might have to, or you want to remove the pipes so it's a little bit easier to paint, you might go ahead and take the hard piece back out before you go ahead and bake the pendant piece all together. And I probably should have done that, but I was able to figure it out as I was going along here. Anyway, this time I am not going to be using my regular metallics. I'm bringing in, these are some paint markers I found online. Again, I will go ahead and put the link in the description area for you to find these, and I really loved them. I was like, okay, I'm in love. I love these things. I mean, no muss, no fuss. You don't have to worry about, rinsing out your brush all the time and getting a different kind of paint. You don't have to worry about the paint kind of drying on a separate area, like sometimes, on a separate tile. If I've got my tile out, I usually do that, as you guys all know. But I thought, yeah, I really liked these pens. They were so great. And one of the reasons why I liked them so much was that there was enough of a variety in this set of colors. So I had like some purples, some blues, a little bit of a red to rose kind of colors. I had some greens, and then of course I have my bronzes and my yellows. There was enough variety to choose from that I really didn't feel hemmed in by the color selection. Plus, they had a brush tip and they had a more blunt end type tip. So I was like, yeah, these are going to work out great. Now, you might notice, and you might not on these pens, I have a little taped area on this pen. What I did was I took some black paper, and these pens are such that you have like a darker color that it can, when you paint down, and this was on black paper, you kind of notice it right there. There's a darker kind of color that comes off of these pens, and then there's a really lighter type of color that comes off that same pen. So I made the two, you might say the light and the dark version, and then taped that onto the pen itself using some packing tape or whatever I had, so I could see what the actual color was. Saved me a lot of hassle, because sometimes I'm like, was that the pen I used? Oh, I can't remember, especially when you're going back and forth between pens. You could tell that little, yeah, right there. So it was dark blue from that pen, but also had a lighter version in it. So keep that in mind. You might want to try that, because if you're trying to find, I'm like going, well, I really want that lighter version. Well, you might get that. Just depends upon the light and how it hits it. See right there, once it hits that light, you get that lighter version. But in some respects, you also get the darker version in there as well. And I found that usually the darker version would come out more the more I would go back over the particular color I was painting. So it just, once in a while you'll get that nice light, but then you'll get the dark. They're fun markers to play with. I mean, if nothing else, I'd get them just to play with them, because they were just fun. And on clay, oh, I loved how these went down. They felt good. It was all, I'm a kinetic learner, so everything's on the feel thing. I'm on the touchy person kind of a thing. They were just wonderful, just smooth as they went down. Here's one more thing also when it comes to these markers. There's going to be times when you're going to get, I want to say, color in areas you don't want, okay? Even on my belt and things like that. So I brought in my more detailed brush and my regular black matte acrylic paint and painted those areas back over again. You're going to have to do some of that when you're dealing with such a tiny area where you're trying to get details. Do that. Get as much of your base colors down, and then go over the more finer details with either the black matte, or you might just say, to heck with it, I'm just going to color this up with the next color that I want to use on the small detailed areas of the pendant piece. Anyway, from here, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to let you guys watch my hands talk once more as I paint up the base of our spoon pendant piece. Now that I got the base part of this pendant all painted up, I'm going to bring in my paint markers one more time, and I'm going to bring in those crazy clay gears that I had just kind of sitting off to the side from some of the earlier projects I had done, and I'm going to start painting them up as well, and we'll add them into the little black posts that you can see on the pendant area. And you just pick and choose which ones you like the best as to how they look to you and so on, and just paint those up. And then once you have those painted, I bring in a little bit of my super glue and glue them into the pendant piece. As I go along more and more on this particular, adding in the extras, the more I found that some of the pieces were just too big. So here's where you have fun. Go ahead and start cutting some of this stuff in half and maybe even in quarters. When you do that, you can add that into the top of the gears or even to the sides. It makes the pieces small enough. It still looks like steampunk, but you're kind of adding them into the pendant where it will fit better. So keep that in mind as you start doing that. Now, once I get that all set up, and I am also going to be using the little clock hands that I got my cutters from Miss Barb. I will put her link in the description area, so if you want to go ahead and knock on Miss Barb's door for maybe some of these I want to say these cutters, you can go ahead and email her on that. Anyway, once I get these pieces all put in, I'm going to then take this particular pendant piece I've got all together, bring in some fresh clay that has been rolled out on a number 4 setting. I'll bring in my eye pin. I'll make the little hook feature. I'll place that down onto that clay, trace it out with my needle tool, and then rebake the whole piece at 275 degrees for about 7 to 10 minutes for me, and probably just a little bit longer for you. Okay, so at this point, the earring pieces have been thoroughly baked. So you're going to take off all the metal from them and pop them right off the handles. So you'll have two pieces. Take all the metal pieces, set them to the side, and then bring in those same metallic paint markers to go ahead and start painting these things up. Before you do that though, I like to paint this thing black, as I like to do with all my stuff before I put my final color on there. And then as I'm painting these things, I figured out, you know what? I wanted to take the clock pieces off and the little gear. The thing was, unfortunately, I had glued those in permanently. So I had to go in with a detail brush and be a little careful where I put that black, because I didn't want to have to go back over those fine details I had already put in. So kind of an FYI, do as I say, not as I do kind of a thing. Don't, if you got the gears and you know exactly where you're going to place them, maybe push them into the clay piece and then pop them back off before you bake the entire thing. That way you can come back in, paint the thing black, put on your metallic paints on the base part, and then add in your gears and all that little extra later. So once more though, I'm going to let you guys go ahead and watch my hands talk as I paint up the rest of this and add in those little tiny watch gears, and then finally put the backing on the earring pieces as well. One more thing here, another one of those do as I say, not as I do. When I was going through and I was trying to paint this up, I was trying to match up my colors. I put all my markers away. Leave out the markers you're using when you go to make these, because I thought, oh, I'll just be able to, yeah, sometimes you can't. So make it a system of where you put the markers off to one side when you're trying to, if you've got to take a break from the pendant and you got to go and do the, you know, the earrings later, put your markers off to the side that you were using so you know which ones you actually used. Because I was like, okay, which ones did I use again? Yeah, if there's a way to try and keep track of that, please do so. You're going to save yourself a whole lot of hassle. All right, so at this point, the pendant piece has been completely and thoroughly baked. I'm going in along this because really my purple here, and if I didn't state it before, my purple acts as my mud or my scrap clay. So if you were wondering why purple, well, that's what I had on hand. Anyway, I'm coming in with my black matte acrylic paint, and I'm painting the sides of this because I want this to look really nice. So to finish this thing up, I'm going to paint the back side with my black paint, and I'll also do the sides. And then what I'll do is I'll bring in those crazy metallic markers I love so much, and paint the side edge as to what color was which. That way then it'll look like it's all uniform and that's starting to wrap around to the back side. Now I'm not going to paint the back side, I'm going to leave that black. Once I have this completely done, then I'm also going to bring in some of my, it's like a copper silver jewelry chain, wrap that around, but before I do it, I'm going to varnish the entire piece first. Then I'll put the chain in and glue that in with my super glue and call that good on this pendant piece. So from here, once more, I'm going to let you guys watch my hands talk as I completely finish up my steampunk spoon pendant piece. Okay, so these things have been thoroughly baked, and I'm bringing in a black paint marker I had just recently purchased not long ago, and I really like it. And again, I'm going to go ahead, I'll put the link in the description area, so if you guys are like wondering, okay, where did she get that thing? I'll let you go ahead and find it there. The nice thing about this particular marker was I could get like a whole bunch of them for not too much money, because I use black so much, like as my base coat whenever I'm painting in my polymer clay. Instead of always using the brush, this is a nice option. And in doing so, it's like no muss, no fuss. They don't have to worry about like the paint down here, like on the piece of paper there at that. Okay, I don't have to worry about that. Although every once in a while, I still need to go back to my brush to sometimes get to the indents, because the marker didn't necessarily always reach all the little indents on the side here. So keep that in mind. Sometimes you are going to have to go to a paintbrush, but not always. And that's where my marker came in really handy. Anyway, I'm going to paint up the entire extra part since I backed it after this has been baked. Once this is all painted up, I'll take off, and you notice here all of my metal gears have been taken, or I should say have been taken off of the clay here. So now that they're taken off and I paint this whole thing up, I'll then varnish it, and then I'll come back in, I'll glue those metal pieces into the actual earring pieces, put in the earring findings, and finish it all up completely. So once more, and for the final time, I'm going to go ahead and let you guys watch my hands talk as I finish my earrings and complete up my entire steampunk spoon jewelry set. All right, so this is the end result of creating my steampunk spoon jewelry set. Please use this for study and reference. And if you like this video, like and bop the like button, subscribe, and leave me a comment. I'm always wondering what you're thinking. Otherwise, I am sending out my biggest hugs to each of you, and I hope you have a fantastic day.